Hello everyone. It's very nice to be here, meet you this afternoon. My name's Katie Lewis. I'm the head of English Languages and Arts at Pearson EdXL. I have the melancholy pleasure of doing our tribute to Benjamin Zephaniah this afternoon. I'm assuming, hands up in the room, we know who Benjamin Zephaniah is? Yes. So in 2019, when we added new set texts onto the GCSE English Literature specification, one of those books being the adaptation of Refugee Boy. Is anyone studying Refugee Boy? Anyone read that book? Yeah, we've got Refugee Boy over here as well. Fantastic. Lots of people have also read Benjamin's work, like at Key Stage 3. Hands up if anyone's read one of his books or any of his poetry, either at school or outside of school. Yes. So when we add texts onto a specification, what we tend to do is we'll reach out to the publishers of those texts just to let them know. So just in case they were planning on taking it out of print and suddenly thousands of children are going to want to buy it, just in case they were suddenly going to change some of the words in there and we're going to write exam questions on it and it's like, oh my God, that scene wasn't even in it before. We have to just make sure that they know what's going on. So we reached out to the publishers of all of the books. We also reached out to the authors. Pam, in fact, using her usual lovely Welsh tenacity, just thought, you know what, we're going to reach out to the authors, let them know. You never know, they might be interested, it might be something that they care about. And I think for some reason, I'm not quite sure why, gave them my mobile phone number as well, just in case they wanted to have a chat about it. Many months go by, and I'm in the waiting room of the hospital in Paddington. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever been to a hospital in London. It's not the kind of most interesting place to hang out, and you will be hanging out there for a really long time. And my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. Normally you don't answer the phone when an unrecognized number comes up, but I thought, you know what, I've been here for 4 hours, I might as well speak to this spam person, give myself something fun to do. I answer the phone. Hello, is that Katie? It's me, Benjamin. Thinking, I don't think I know anybody called Benjamin. The voice was kind of familiar. Oh, it's Benjamin Zephaniah. Bearing in mind it's been about 7 months since Pam sent the email. I've heard that you've added Refugee Boy onto the GCSE English specification. I think that's amazing. Would you like to come and meet me at the university where I lecture and we can have a chat about it? Do you know, I think I would. So he said, come for an hour, we'll have a chat. So off I went. I was most excited I think I might have ever been in the workplace. Off I went to the university where he was working at the time. About 4 hours later, I had to say to him, I really have to go now. I have to pick the children up from school. He had just given up the entire of his afternoon, talked about his work, talked about his life, talked to me about his books and about his writing. He was the most wonderful, kind and generous man, and he has always been an amazing friend to Lit in Colour. So we have had the pleasure of having Benjamin Zephaniah contribute to numerous Lit in Colour events over the years. When we had to move to delivering this event online during COVID, we had a remote interview with him. And as a kind of part of the tribute to Benjamin, I'm going to show you guys now the recording. It's about 10 minutes of that conversation between Benjamin Zephaniah and me from our online event those few years ago. But just before I do, we had a conversation beforehand to do the planning and the walkthrough, just like you would when you're kind of preparing for online events, preparing for conferences. When we joined for that kind of preparatory run-through, he was there on the screen wearing a burgundy dressing gown and just as relaxed as you like. And he said to me, I don't really feel comfortable being asked to do a performance. I don't really want to do a performance of any of my poems. I just want to kind of talk about the process, talk about the writing, answer questions. So I said, fine, we won't ask you to do a poem, don't worry about it, it'll be completely fine. So let's watch the video and see how that worked out. So this is our tribute to Benjamin Zephaniah.
to ask you then, you were saying about Refugee Boy. Was there anything about the kind of Ethiopia-Eritrea conflict that inspired you to use that as your context specifically? Or was it just about finding a kind of contemporary sort of background setting? Or
it was the latter. I had actually spent some time living in Yugoslavia. And when I saw Yugoslavia fall apart, I just couldn't believe it, because I knew that country quite well. It's a very long story, and I smile when I say this, but it's absolutely true. I was a Yugoslavian millionaire. I earned a lot of money in Yugoslavia, which they wouldn't let me take out. So I went to Yugoslavia to spend it. I had a record over there, of all places. So I was in Yugoslavia, and I made lots of friends. And I didn't understand, and I think a lot of them didn't understand anything about their ethnicities and that stuff. I mean, they were just Yugoslavians. And then suddenly the country fell apart. And I'll never forget going to a friend of mine, and saying, how are you getting on? How's your wife? And he said, we're not together anymore. She's a Croat and I'm a Serb. And I was like, so you were in love, weren't you? No, our communities won't tolerate that. And I was just so shocked by that, So when I wanted to write about refugees, but yeah, I wanted a backdrop. And I knew Ethiopia because I'd spent some time there also. And I knew about the conflict with Eritrea. So I thought it would be good, it would just be a good backdrop. And also, I didn't want it to be about war as such. So the first, in the novel, the first couple of pages that happen before the story starts are two identical pages. One is in Eritrea, one is in Ethiopia, and it's about discrimination in both countries, with mother in one instance and father in the other, saying, look, it doesn't matter where we come from, we're Africans, we're human beings. And then the story gets started kind of more or less in England. I didn't want it to be a war story, I wanted to be somebody, the product of love. And that love just happens to come from two people who are born on different sides of a border.
Yeah.
And that puts this child in a very difficult position.
And also that idea, I think, that you can be born on the wrong side of a border before that border even exists, like you're saying about Yugoslavia, you don't even have a border, and then suddenly you're on the wrong side of it, and it's completely beyond your control. Which I think also, in a way, kind of slightly made me think of your We Refugees poem, because that, again, was about, well, this could be anyone, this could be anywhere.
It could be anyone. You could be born in a country, raised in a country, you think it's your country, and then because of some men in some suits disagreeing, the country disappears. The country just disappears.
Because obviously Refugee Boy was the novel, and you were the author of the novel, and we talked a little bit about the kind of background and the process for that. But then it was adapted for the stage by Lem Sisay, and I just wondered how that came about, that adaptation happened, and how it came about that Lem Sisay was the one to do that. Is that something that, like, a choice of your own, or do people sort of choose that for you?
No, the Yorkshire Playhouse approached me and said, would I write it as a play? And I said, no. I like when other people come in and just do something different with my work. Because I'll be too precious. I'll want to keep all the elements. And I have to confess that I'm repeating myself. I just take so much care about all the elements that when I see it kind of changed, and if it works, it works. But in my mind, I still have the original in my mind, So anyway, I said, look, I don't want to do it. And originally I said, can you get a new young writer to do it? I want to give a young writer. Because by then it was kind of, I was going to say established, but people knew about it. But I wanted a young writer to have the opportunity to do it. And then Lem, every time I have a novel come out, Lem reads it and calls me and gives me his thoughts on it. And he'd already done that with Refugee Boy. But then he came to me and he said, Benjamin, I have to do this. And he kind of said, look, it's partly my story. And I thought about it and I went, yes, you're right. And so Len went with it. And it was, you know, I let him have free reign. He did show me a couple of drafts and we did talk about it. But that's how it happened.
But how does that feel, though? Because you mentioned if you were doing it yourself, you'd be too kind of wedded to maybe sticking with the original idea. But do you get kind of like proprietorial, like, you know, stop messing with my characters? Or does it feel quite kind of interesting to see those characters from somebody else's perspective?
Again, the latter. You see, when I was writing the novel, and I kind of do this in my novels, in all of them I've done this, there's very little poetry in them. There's a poem at the end of the book. Within the story, it's a straightforward narrative. And I think what Len did, Len put the poetry back into it.
Right.
So, you know, the play is very poetic. I think the difference is that with the novel, you can see the minute detail of how a child is processed in the detention centers and all those kind of things. You can see the way that they are questioned in court and just the detail of the trauma that they're going through. In Len's version, you have a poetic interpretation of this, which is just as valid.
Were there any parts of the adaptation where you thought, you know, I wouldn't have done it like that, or even made you think, oh, I could have done that in the novel originally, almost kind of second guess what you'd done from the beginning? Do you ever get that feeling?
Well, there's a point in the book where, in the play, where when I'm watching it, I'm slightly embarrassed, and everybody laughs in the audience at me. It's where Alan is got this idea. He's gonna get a demonstration, and he's gonna get this Rasta poet. You know, this Rasta poet that does this Jamaican style, and it's obviously me and the whole audience. But no, I think if there was something I didn't like, I would have said. But I'll tell you a very quick story that I think explains something. A teacher was telling me that she was reading one of my poems to the class, and said one of her students was just kind of sitting there, kind of like that. And he went, "Miss, that's rubbish. I can do better than that." And he got up, and without reading the poem, just from memory, he performed my poem. And
do you remember which poem it was?
It was this poetry. This poetry is like a rhythm that drops. The tongue brings a rhythm that shoots like a shot. And he said, you know, he knows it, he was raised on it, and he knows how to perform it. So I do think that we have to try as much as possible to understand that I call it a poetry. There's a tree called poetry, and it has lots of different branches on it. And no one branch has more value than another branch. It really is as simple as that, you know.
Some people are begging if they could hear you do a little bit more of that poem that you just spontaneously went into there. I don't know if that's, is there any chance that you might be able to finish off for people by just giving them a little bit more of this poetry at the end?
Yes, of course. I'll do that. Do you want me to do it now?
If you don't mind, and then we'll say thank you so much, and I'll thank you on behalf of everyone for just being such a great inspiration to the people in the room and to the students. But yeah, if you don't mind, that would be a wonderful way to finish.
I wrote it because people kept asking me, or I created it because people kept asking me, what kind of poetry do you do? And I've really struggled to talk about it. That's why I felt the need to write it. And when they asked me the question, I would just perform the poem. This poetry is like a rhythm that drops. The tongue brings a rhythm that shoots like a shot. This poetry is designed for ranting, dancehall style. big mouth chanting. This poetry won't put you to sleep saying, follow me like you're blind sheep. This poetry is not party political, not designed for those who are critical. This poetry goes with me when I go to my bed. It gets into my dreadlocks and it lingers around my head. This poetry is with me when I am riding my bike. I have tried Shakespeare, respect due dear, but this is the stuff I like. This poetry is not afraid of going in a book, no, but this poetry needs ears to hear and eyes to have a look. Yes, this poetry is verbal rhythm, no big words involved. And if I have a problem, the rhythm gets it solved. I have tried to be romantic. It did no good for me. I take a reggae rhythm and build my poetry. I could try something personal, but you've heard it all before. No written words are needed because plenty words in store. This poetry is called dub ranting. The tongue plays a beat and the body starts skanking. This poetry is quick and childish. This poetry is for the wise and foolish. Anybody can do it for free. This poetry is for you and me. Don't stretch your imagination. This poetry is for the good of the nation. Chant in the morning, I chant in the night, I chant in the darkness and under the spotlight. I passed through university, I passed through sociology, and then I got a dread degree in dreadful ghettoology. This poetry is with me when I take a walk, and when I am talking to myself in poetry I talk. This poetry is with me, below me, and above. You see, this poetry is from inside me and goes to you with love.
To say that was unexpected, that he would just be so generous with his time and be so skillful as to be able to just... I was fully expecting him to maybe do 1 or 2 lines, because all of the people in the comments were saying, oh, please do that again, please do that again, please ask him to do it. And I was like, oh, I really don't want to ask because I said that I wouldn't. So would you mind doing just a little bit more? And then off he went and just did the whole thing just like that. Absolutely spectacular. So we wanted to take this opportunity to thank him for all of his work and all of his contribution to Lit in Colour. Thank you very much.